Hello to all viewers, hello to everyone. I am Shiloh, the last scribe for the house of Jacob. I am a messenger and a true servant of the Almighty. November 29th, 2019 is the Almighty's judgment day upon all things on the earth. On that day, the Almighty will reveal himself and everyone will receive life or death. On that day, he will declare war against all gods, goddesses, godlike ones, and against everything that he considers to be evil. On that day, he will gather his people together wherever they may be, and they will receive their inheritance. This video is to open your eyes and give you understanding about some of the laws the Almighty established through Moses for the house of Jacob. This is part 3 of my video titled, Bringing the Laws of the Almighty Out of the Darkness of Dishonor and to the Light of Honor. In order to correctly interpret the Holy Bible scriptures, you need to use the Strong's Concordance Exhaustive Bible. This book contains the recorded definitions for all the words in the Holy Bible. Let's begin. Deuteronomy 4:35 says, "The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. O house of Jacob, unto you, in the sight of others, the Almighty appeared. Unto you, he presented himself so you could look at each other in the face and consider. Unto you, he caused himself to be seen so you can have experience with him and advise yourselves. Unto you, the Almighty revealed these things so you will know that he is the all-supreme being. So you will understand that he is the all-supreme ruler, and there is no God king beside him. So you will know the Almighty is not a part of any king of a city. So you will understand it is the Almighty alone by himself, and there is no power or strength like his. The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler." Deuteronomy 5:23 says, "The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. O house of Jacob, the mountain did burn with fire. And when you heard the voice of the Almighty speak out of the midst of the cloud of fire and thick darkness, your elders came near to me. You came near to me, even all the leaders of your families." Deuteronomy 5:22 says, "O house of Jacob, with a great voice the Almighty spoke the words of his commandment unto all your assembly out of the midst of the cloud of fire and thick darkness. Then the Almighty wrote them into 2 tablets of stone and delivered them to me. He added nothing else to his message, his judgment, his prophecy, or his promise. He added no more. The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens." Deuteronomy 5:24 says, "O house of Jacob, you responded by saying, Today we have seen the Almighty appear and present himself to us. Today we have met the Almighty and had experience with him. Today we have looked at each other in the face and considered. Adam, the first man, is another species of mankind. We have seen his mark. He is a hypocrite and a person of low degree. The spokesmen who teach the commands, the promises, the warnings, and the destructions of Elohim leads away from the Almighty. Because we have gazed upon the greatness of the Almighty's pride and the greatness of his magnificence, because we have observed the greatness of the power of the Almighty, and he has commanded us, today we have discerned that Elohim are from the thoughts of Adam. The Almighty, our all-supreme ruler, has showed us his glory, his honor, his reputation, and his authority. The Almighty has life. He cannot die. The Almighty lives, and he lives forever. Today, we approve of the Almighty. Today, we respect the Almighty. O house of Jacob, the Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens." Deuteronomy 6:4 says, O house of Jacob, gather together, hear the report, and understand. Hear and be obedient. Listen carefully and declare. The Almighty, the All-Supreme Being, our All-Supreme Ruler, is the only All-Supreme Ruler. He is alone. There is only one Almighty, and He will remain the same. Deuteronomy 10:17 says, The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. He is ruler over all Elohim. He is ruler over all lords. Honor the Almighty. He is exceedingly greater and much more noble than the Elohim. He is exceedingly older and much more important than the Elohim. Respect the Almighty. He is exceedingly mightier and much more older than the Elohim. His intensity is the greatest. His acts are much more terrible and astonishing than the Elohim. Fear the Almighty, your all-supreme ruler. He is exceedingly prouder and much more terrifying than the Elohim. The Almighty does not accept bribery. The Almighty does not respect bribery. He will not respect persons that take bribes. He will not accept persons that take bribes. He will not forgive those persons that take bribes. The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. Deuteronomy 12:5 says, Out of all of your families, the Almighty will choose a place to put His name, reputation, honor, glory, authority, even His habitation. It will be there you will seek. It will be there you will come. Deuteronomy 12:6 says, There you will bring your contributions, your sacrifices, burnt offerings, your tithes, your gift offerings, your vows, your free will offerings, the firstlings of your herds, and the firstlings of your flocks. Deuteronomy 12:7 says, And there you will eat before the Almighty, your all-supreme ruler, and you will rejoice in all that you put your hand to, you and your households, wherein the Almighty has blessed you. Deuteronomy 12:5, Deuteronomy 12:6, and Deuteronomy 12:7 tells us that the Almighty Himself will choose the place of His habitation, and it will be there, at the place the Almighty chooses, where you will bring your contributions, your tithes, your offerings, and your vows. Right now, there is no church on earth that the Almighty Himself has chosen. The Almighty is not within any church on this earth, and if you are going to church to pray, worship, or whatever it may be, then you are certainly in the wrong place, because the Almighty, the Creator of all things, has not chosen a place for you to worship Him, as it is this day. Deuteronomy 18:10 says, The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. Let there not be found among you anyone that makes his son or daughter to pass through the fire. Let there not be found among you anyone that practices or distributes divinations and prophecies of Baal. Let there not be found among you anyone that uses the prophecies of the false prophets of Israel, or the prophecies of the nations. Let there not be found among you anyone that uses or distributes magical scrolls. Let there not be found among you anyone that practices spiritism, fortune-telling, or magic. Let there not be found among you anyone that observes signs and omens, or who uses enchantments. Let there not be found among you anyone that practices witchcraft. O house of Jacob, the Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. Deuteronomy 18:11 says, The Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. Let there not be found among you anyone that requests or consults with a charmer, a magician, a necromancer, or wizard. Let there not be found among you anyone that is joined in fellowship or alliance with a society of charmers or magicians. Let there not be found among you anyone that is joined in fellowship or alliance with a society who practices necromancy or evokes the dead. Let there not be found among you anyone that is joined in fellowship or alliance with a society of wizards. O house of Jacob, the Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. Deuteronomy 27 and 26 says, O house of Jacob, the Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. The Almighty is all-supreme ruler of all the earth and its heavens. Cursed is the person that does not confirm that all the words of this law need to be established, imposed, and performed. So be it. The people must declare the commandment and promise. The people must speak of the faithfulness required. They must say, surely it is the truth. Cursed is the person that does not confirm this. O house of Jacob, the Almighty is your all-supreme ruler. This is the end of part 3 of my video titled, Bringing the Laws of the Almighty Out of the Darkness of Dishonor into the Light of Honor. November 29, 2019 is the day of the Almighty's judgment upon all living things. I am Shiloh, the last scribe for the house of Jacob. Watch my videos, follow me, and discover the recorded truth about the Almighty, His power, His glory, His honor, His reputation, His experiences with, and His message to all the individual species of persons on the earth.